Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Roseanne Hassett. I'm the Executive Director of the American Civil Defense Association. We're happy to have you with us today. Today, we will be discussing the mission of Infragard and how Infragard is protecting America's critical infrastructure. Presenter will be Dave Christensen, and he will be introducing himself in just a moment. I need to remind you that nothing in this presentation should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The opinions of the viewers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of TACDA. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. Please do not interrupt the presentation. We will have 45 minutes of formal discussion and 15 minutes afterward for questions. So with that, I will turn the time over to Dave.
Very good. Thank you. So welcome, everybody. As was noted, my name is Dave Christensen. I don't tend to use David. It's a little formal, so it's just Dave. That's even on my LinkedIn profile. I'm currently a principal architect with a Fortune 500 company. I leave my company name out of my presentations, but I'm also the president of New Jersey Infragard, and I'll get into that. So my background is, 35 plus years in IT and all facets of support, infrastructure, engineering, and now architecture and security. I ran support for many years for extremely large organizations, created a number of support help desks, infrastructure, network engineering support teams. I ran a C# development group for about 7 years with 2 million registered users, clients on that site. I moved over into project and program management, and then eventually architecture for the last 10 years, architecture and security. I'm still doing it within the software engineering world. So I do a lot of things like threat modeling and tech stack evaluations, if you know what that is. I got involved with Infragard because I received my CISSP and I wanted to put some good use to my security knowledge. So I joined Infragard about 13 years ago. I've been on the board about half of that time and president just recently, a year and a half. So Infragard New Jersey, I'll get into our mission, but that's my personal background, engineering. While I was in college, I was also doing electrical work. So I'm also a licensed electrical contractor in New Jersey and general contractor. Because in the weekends, I just love to build and repair things, get my head off the computer. So let's get a little bit into Infragard New Jersey. I'll talk a little bit about like our national charter. And if you read the magazine article, I'll touch on some of the topics that we were talking about in the article. What we do in New Jersey, current focus for 2024, partner organizations. I'll even talk about some of our successes, and then I'll take some Q&A. All right. Hang on as we navigate. There we go. So kind of our national charter. I did pull this from the article. I'm not going to go through it word for word, but basically it started in a field office and the relationship with the FBI grew out of that field office. Obviously, if you do any work with federal agencies, state, local agencies, they just don't have the skills they need all the time in order to do what they need to do. So they pull in private sector people in order to shore that up. And sometimes it's consulting and sometimes it's partnerships like this, right? So they partnered with Infragard to get an understanding of the risks in the private sector, even more so specifically around critical infrastructure, right? Utilities, energy, electric, gas, et cetera. That relationship in that local field office worked so well, they expanded that to all 56 field offices. So right now, we recently went through a revetting of our members. We have somewhere between 30 and 40,000 national members, and they can only be within the continental United States. They have to be vetted by the FBI, which means they need to know who you are, and obviously no criminal background. So pretty common sense stuff. But the key thing here is, we're trying to get people who are in the private sector, who are U.S. citizens, however you get there, right? Who can work and partner with the federal agencies at a private level, right? Build those trust relationships and be able to work back and forth to understand risks, but also help them educate and mitigate risks, right? So that kind of relationship is done at a national level. So we have our main office is in Washington, D.C., and we have an MOU. I'll talk a little bit about our relationships with different agencies, but we have a signed agreement that says we can work with you, saying in this case, let's say the FBI, and we can have an understanding that our members are vetted, and we have this relationship. So to go a little deeper, the chapters like New Jersey, we have 400 to 500 members in New Jersey alone. Again, we went through some revetting. We had 1,000, 1,200. We've backed that number down to active membership. And these members get together, and I'll talk about specifically what we do, but those members have a direct contact with Newark field office, right? They can pick up the phone and get an FBI agent and talk to them about a particular issue, questions that we have about what we're working on together, education things we're working on together. It's very open, right? Emails, pick up the phone. I was actually in the Newark field office like 2 weeks ago. They invited us to an event. So it was New Jersey Infragard, and it was Citizens Academy. And we did a quick 5-minute presentation to another group that I had in there for outreach, right? So it's all about building relationships. And this has been going on for more than 20 years. So specifically for Infragard, like who are we? Like what is that Infragard thing, right? So it's basically members of critical infrastructure. And if you look at the CISA, 16 sectors, if you include the space stuff and some other stuff we're doing, it's going to be like 18 sectors soon. But it's energy, right? And education is a subsector, but it's really important to us. So I'll say energy, education, transportation, water, wastewater. So those critical aspects of our society, the critical infrastructure in those aspects of our society, we're trying to get people in the private sector to join the organization and then work with, the FBI. And not just the FBI. We work with CISA, Secret Service, whoever we need to partner with in order to educate or support, what those efforts are to secure those environments. And sometimes it's building a relationship between those entities, right? So you get a utility in one county is really doesn't understand cybersecurity. Well, let's plug them in with the utility from this county, and let's get them talking and sharing, right? Best practices, because they understand the language, they understand the issues, they understand the budgetary restrictions that they may have, and somebody may have solved it over here. If I walk in and I say, hey, I can help you and do an evaluation, for free, we'll just walk in and say, hey, I can have a conversation with you about good IT, OT hygiene, right? The operational technology and the information technology, and what the hygiene is, patching and security and firewalls. I can have all those conversations with you. But if I don't understand water, wastewater, and I tell you, yeah, you're gonna have to spend, $500,000 to get this done, even phase one, you'd be like, yeah, we don't have that, right? So it's better to pull in people from that industry who have done what you're doing, who have successfully done it, and get them to talk at that level. So we found great success in being able to do that. And that's part of our partnership, being able to connect people. So our mission, Private Sector Alliance, which I said, it's not just me working at a Fortune 500 company, but also local utilities, right? Could be those local utilities, this energy, gas facilities, and whether it's privately owned or state owned or federally owned or managed, we can still be partners within this alliance. We still have that relationship and that capability to build those relationships. So our mission really is to support what the FBI is doing, obviously what DHS and CISA are doing to shore up and secure critical infrastructure. But we may know things that they don't know because we may be seeing it first, right? We may see the network stuff because we, in the particular company that I'm working in right now, like we're global and we've got data centers in 12 locations. So I see network intrusions globally. Like the FBI may see it, but I bet I see it first, right? So being able to have those communications with CISA and DHS and saying, hey, what's hitting the U.S. Borders, right? Those network router edges. What are you guys seeing? Well, we're seeing a new, APT threat, and it's coming from this country, and this is what we've seen over the last 3 weeks. Yeah, we only saw a little bit of that, right? Those conversations are really, really important, right? Especially if it's in the beginning of a threat or a threat model or an intrusion. Here's a great example. I was on a call with a vendor, and because of our relationship with the vendor, they included me and a number of people from our company, from Infragard and other agencies on this call analysis. There was like 3,000 people on this global call, and it was to talk about what they were seeing in the wild, right? In the internet, in the wild. It was a new threat. They hadn't seen this particular threat before in this particular flavor, and it was the same day we were able to talk about it. So that's pretty rare that, you know, a research company, a vendor, has very, very detailed information about a cybersecurity threat that they're going to share with partners, like while it's happening. Like we just saw this today. We wanted to share it immediately, and then obviously get people's feedback, create a mechanism to get some additional feedback on how big this thing could get. So that's an example of partnerships and how well they can work, right? So we'll talk a little bit deeper as to what we do in New Jersey and those relationships that I touched on a little bit. Here's a little bit about the MOU. So when you go into a relationship with, let's say we have this ongoing relationship with the FBI, but if you think about it, critical infrastructure is not just FBI, right? It's other agencies. And I'm in New Jersey, so I'm going to use New Jersey as an example. New Jersey State Police, New Jersey Office of Homeland Security, right? OHS&P. So that is really the intelligence bureau of our state police. They partner with CISA at a New Jersey level. They partner with FBI at a New Jersey level, and other agencies, county and federal agencies, to look at the threats and evaluate the threats. But they'll also do updates. So if there's ongoing threat analysis that they can share, it's not part of an investigation, it's part of a public notification, you know, we can get pulled into that for briefings. I think I go to briefings. I don't do the weekly briefings, but I think I do the bi-weekly briefings. And I'm allowed to pull in people from my company. So I'll send a note to our senior leaders, our CIO and some of the VPs. And I say, hey, there's a DHS CISA FBI briefing. I don't know if you want to join, but it's going to be at 12 today. So now we can bring these people in from our critical operations center that may be in New Jersey, or they may actually have insight to all over the world. And some of the stuff that we're seeing cyber-wise in New Jersey may have aspects to California and other areas where we're actually residing for the company, or where they're functioning. So it's pretty powerful. That information sharing and be able to communicate is pretty powerful. So I think having a relationship with one entity, and I'm sure you do this as well in your nonprofit, having a relationship with one entity opens the door to having a relationship with another entity, and then being able to share that information across is critical, right? So what we do is at a national level, we signed an MOU with the FBI, with DHS, with CISA, with several other agencies that says, hey, we can have an operating plan and a communication model at confidential, not any security clearance level, but at a confidential level or FOU level. They call it for official use only. We could do that. And then any public information, we obviously will partner in and get the message out or educate people on. So that was pretty easy to do because we all had background checks and we're all part of this national organization. And then what we do is we take that relationship locally, right? So like I said, we get invited to the Newark FBI field office, not just to present on what we're doing, but for Newark to tell us what they're seeing and what they're doing, but also what other partner organizations might be doing. So we get pulled into that community to support critical infrastructure, and whatever investigations are going on, that's still going on, right? They're still going to ask us questions and they're going to go away and do their investigations. But the public component of that, what they can share, is what we get to see, right? You may not see it in the news, but it may be public information that we have access to. Ongoing efforts to provide fuel to connect and execute together. I'll tell you, I think being able to get on a call when a cyber threat is going on and a research company is actually kind of unraveling it the same day, that's pretty powerful. I don't think I've seen a better example of partnership sharing than that. I think it's pretty important. So within Infragard National and also within New Jersey, we have organizations inside, like the National Disaster Resilience Council. I think it was actually in the article as National Defense, but it should have been National Disaster Resilience Council. And the way I got involved with these working groups inside Infragard is like, okay, I'm an Infragard member and I really want to be involved, right? What can I do to help? And I raised my hand and I talked to some of the leaders. I said, look, here's my background. I would love to get involved. They're like, wow. So you know electric, you know IT, you know OT, you know security and architecture. Why don't you get involved with EMP protection? I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. So when I first got involved with the NDRC, this was a good 6-7 years ago, they started just unraveling EMP risks. And I think they were working on their first book at the time. And I didn't write that book. I was involved with the second book, talking about EMP protections, but really like letting the general public and leadership like senators and congressmen let them know the risk, right? What is the risk from EMP? So this group who formed out of the EMP special interest group also had members from the EMP Commission. I don't know if you know, 2005, 2008, there was an EMP Commission, National Commission, Presidential Commission. Some of the professors on that committee are part of our Infragard NDRC. So not only do we have an understanding and a relationship of the risk, we also have people that have worked directly with, you know, Washington, D.C. and the White House to kind of get them to understand the risks and the implications, but not at a nuclear weapon level, at every level, right? Handheld risks, non-nuclear risks, you know, what does an EMP really mean to you in daily life? And so the EMP Commission did their work and they made some recommendations. But out of that, they also started to work with us and they created one book and then we created a second book. But then we sent the book to all the congressmen and senators, and then we followed it up with training. I know I did a lot of one-on-one training in New Jersey from the book. I went to New York State and New York City Infragard meetings. I went to ISC squared meetings. I did New Jersey chapter meetings, and we actually taught out of the book, right? We would take 30 minutes to 60 minutes, and we would go just through a few topics to trying to get members to understand the risks, right? It's not just electric, it's water, wastewater, right? The risks to hospitals, that was a huge one that we unraveled for folks. Hey, we understand you have generators, but the generators don't last more than beyond a certain period of time. And we would start going through examples for that period of time. And we said, look, now, once you have electric failure, you've got water, wastewater failure. Now you've got a hygiene issue. And now you've got, you know, bacteria, et cetera, building up in the hospital. You've got death escalation after, you know, weeks, right? Not months, weeks. So that was pretty eye-opening to a lot of people. So we were able to speak to that. The National Capital Region, that is a particular region for Infragard just outside of Washington, D.C. It covers that whole D.C. area. But they're doing a lot of training through our new platform nationally, right? So this Infragard group had a lot of teachers and educators from universities in their group, and they just put together some incredible training. Now that's offered now, I would say over the last 2 years, to members nationally, right? So I would say half of it's free, and then the other half you might pay $50 or $75 as a member. And yeah, it's really worthwhile. I'm pretty impressed with what they're doing. Excuse me. The National Infrastructure Security and Resilience University, that's the platform that the NCR started using. Now I think San Diego, Los Angeles, Dallas chapters are also creating information and platform educational courses within that NISRU. So it's pretty important for membership. Local New Jersey contacts. So like who do we know in New Jersey? Well, I mentioned a few, right? OHS&P, which is the intelligence branch, the counterintelligence branch for New Jersey State Police. Certainly New Jersey State Police and their Critical Infrastructure Protection Bureau. I became very close with the leader over there. And I could pick up the phone and we could talk about what's going on in New Jersey. What are the risks? What do we need to educate the public on? What are the next steps for 2023, 2024? All right, and we would work together. And you would be surprised how welcoming they were. We would speak at their events, they would speak at our events. And then what other local events? Like I said, ISC Squared, ISACA on the cyber side. And there's, excuse me, there's numerous other ones that we work with in New Jersey. For November 2023 event going into 24, our focus would be security partnerships, but going past the information sharing, right? So let's say we get on a call with the vendor and they're unpacking that cybersecurity risk that the day that they found it. That's awesome that you're sharing this information. What do we do with it? Like, what could we possibly do with that information? What are the next steps for us to take that information that you're sharing with us and now share with our partner companies, right? What can we do? So what we're going to do in 24, 25 is we're going to start sharing some of the information that people give us and disseminating it on a new platform, Microsoft platform we're working on, where our members, our partner members, can get that information from us. Now, granted, there's a ton of cybersecurity information out there. If you're in cyber, you're a CISSP or something like that. I must belong to 10, 20, 30 chat channels on risks and how to abate the risks. And we need better information, right? We don't need like a data dump of information. So probably what we're going to do is like an opt-in on what you would like to see, what kind of risks you would like to see, but also here's a phone number who's somebody who's going to be managing, that stuff from one of our special interest groups, right? You can pick up the phone and talk to somebody. And then the way we would work that is we would partner companies with companies, right? Here's a company that did that really well. Here's a company that might be struggling with that thing, whatever it is, IT hygiene, operational technology hygiene that they do in the utility area, and then partner them to execute on that next step, right? Not just share the information, but let's actually get you to that next step, right? 2024 events, just a few, right? AI, fraud, drones, insider threat. So AI is everywhere. Everybody wants to promote it. I think part of that is, marketing, that we spend money on AI. The other thing is, they're just trying to save some money and generate something, even in the software engineering world, generate something from AI. And it's going to take a little while to evolve that. I know that people see successes, and there's been a lot of spoofs around successes. You got to really, really take your time and dive into it. Take a class or join a class that's free and really understand what AI is, because there's a lot of misleading information around AI right now. Fraud for us is a really big topic. There's a lot of elder fraud going on, certainly during tax season. Elder folks are getting texts and emails and phone calls. Hey, your IRS return is stalled. We need your social security number to, get it moving again. Silly things like that are happening all the time. And we do actually go into elder communities, teach fraud safety, right? How to avoid that, how to mitigate that. Drones, it's a big military thing. A lot of movies have come out over the last few years on drone use and misuse. So that's been another topic we touched. Excuse me. A big one on my heart is insider threat, right? How do we mitigate the risks of insider threat? What does that really look like? I've been talking a lot about fraud over the last 6 months. We're trying to use some of that fraud data because we have lots and lots of fraud data in the financial world. And how do we use that fraud data to drive indicators of insider threat, right? Those risks. So we've been deeply into that as well. So a little bit more about what we do. I touched on special interest groups, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper into it and let you know what's happening. At the very end, I'll talk about some of our successes as well. So the special interest groups are near and dear to me because when I got involved with Infragard, I wanted to be involved, right? I raised my hand. I said, hey, I got my CISSP. Like, what do I do with this? I really wanted to be involved, and national security was really important to me, right? Critical infrastructure was really, really important to me. So I plugged into, at the time, was the EMP-SIG, the EMP Special Interest Group on the Northeast, which would have been New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And we had a group of about 20 of us talking about and promoting grid security. So we talked about what's happening in your areas, power outages, how the utilities are handling power outages, How are the residents handling power outages? What are the agencies doing about power outages? And that would be our focus, right? That was our focus. And now, who is doing what around EMP protection, right? Do they even understand what it is? And out of that relationship over a couple of years, several of us were tapped on the shoulder and said, hey, we'd like you to be part of our national organization on this EMP SIG. And so a few of us went over, and then eventually we dragged everybody else with us. So now you've got this national EMP SIG organization, which started off with about 20 people. I think today is somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people who are part of this NDRC, who look at like national critical risks, right? Starting with utilities, right? Electric, water, waste, transportation. So my background was electricity. I was like, okay, well, let me talk about electricity. So we talked about electricity, and I got very, very involved with the energy sector. And I learned a tremendous amount of information from who was running the Northeast organization, Mel Lewis, out of Fairleigh Dickinson University. So my desire to help created that relationship with Mel. And then Mel was like, oh, I'd love help. And I was just a sponge. So for the next 4 years, he mentored me on everything EMP. So Mel's background was he had top secret clearance. He had worked for a number of federal agencies and private companies at a federal level doing communications work, but not just communications work in such that building a receiver and a sender and being able to transponder and be able to communicate. No. Disruptive communications as well. Communications that would impact, self-being, right? Humans. So there was a lot of things that Mel was involved in that he couldn't talk about, but he had a wealth of information. So he kind of took all of that information and poured it out on the EMP topic, and literally had walls and walls of EMP research that he was doing. He was also, I think, the director of the engineering school at FDU at the time. So where am I going with this? So it's relationships that kept me involved, right? I got involved with the energy sector. It says down here, electric, gas, water. I got involved with EMP protection, which led to my relationship with Mel, which created a great relationship. And then when he left the EMP SIG and I took over the Northeast SIG, those relationships that I created with Mel continued into the national organization. And that's how we got something done. That's how the book was created. That's how things were done, is based on those relationships. So similarly, my desire to build those relationships kind of grew into the New Jersey special interest groups. Now we have it for finance, which covers fraud, cyber, agency partner work. Like I said, Chris worked with the IRS. That was just a phenomenal outreach they did, but not just talking, but actually after they were done, they actually met with people, right? They stayed around for an hour and met with people and talked about some of the challenges they might be having. And if they couldn't address them, they would direct them to other people that we know and work with that might be able to help them. IT and telecom, obviously there's lots of cyber, AI. I couldn't make one. There was actually 2 or 3 meetings on AI recently I couldn't make, but on all the different platforms, IBM, Microsoft, Google, all the ones that are out there. Drones, there's a lot of information on drones, both good and bad. But in that IT telecom space, like what are they doing with the agency partners, right? What are they doing with DHS, CISSA, FBI? So Virgil actually has relationships with all of them because he has top secret clearance and he's worked in the federal agencies and he's currently working on some programs and projects. He's got those relationships. So he was actually at Picatinny Arsenal and gave me a call. He's like, hey, can you meet us? I'm here with some of the FBI people at one of our training centers, and they brought up a great topic and we would like to talk about it for New Jersey. I was like, yeah, where are you? Oh, I'm at Picatinny. Great. That's 10 minutes from me. I can meet you there tomorrow. So just being able to have those relationships and pick up the phone and say, hey, there's a new topic we need to talk about. And it happens like same day, right? Because we have relationships. Education, obviously in the cyber world, but what are the risks in that space? And Stan's doing a great job. And then how do we connect to the universities, right? Not just Keene University, but FDU and all the other ones. St. Peter's has a great program on cyber. I think Infragard did some mentoring and training on their master's level program for cybersecurity. Like we just get involved and plugged in and how we can help, right? But again, the glue is the relationships. Critical manufacturing. Alex in that world, being plugged into that, being in a manufacturing role on a cyber level, but he gets to see everything globally. He gets to see everything, right? So what are the issues happening in the United States, but what also happens with trying to get equipment, not just into the United States, but from other locations to the United States if something fails? Those locations, do they have redundancy, right? Does the redundancy match what we have in the US? Can we use them in other locations and vice versa, right? This is about US critical infrastructure and protecting it, but we can learn from what other countries are doing and what we are doing in other countries, right? So having that view is incredibly powerful, and then also building those relationships around manufacturing. On the energy side, Doug does a great job at connecting utilities and utility partners, being very involved, like I said, for the last 17 years in the utility world. Me, I would probably, if I wasn't doing this administrative component, I would definitely be plugged into the energy sector with Doug, talking to the utilities, talking about their IT, OT, hygiene, and just, making them sick, just repeating myself about doing the basic stuff until everybody got it and understood it, right? That would be my sweet spot. In the chemical world, like I said, Ed and Chuck, former federal investigators, came into that world in New Jersey space, brought that wealth of information with them, and then nationals were like, hey, we would love for you to work with us. So now they're doing it for New Jersey and nationals, both in the chemical space, but then what does that touch? Manufacturing, pharmaceutical, cyber, materials risks. There's a lot involved with the chemical space. Okay. So on the education side, so let me kind of recap Infragard New Jersey. So Infragard New Jersey is an FBI partner. We do basically whatever they need us to do. If we see a risk, we talk about a risk. If they need some information about something, if they need us to speak on a topic, or if they, vice versa, right? But we also educate the public on what we're seeing, what we're doing, the work we're doing, the partnerships that we're doing, and at a public level, not at a clearance level, top secret clearance level or anything, at a public level, we build relationships and educate people, and we pull in partners to do that as well. So agency partners like the FBI, DHS, CISA, IRS, Secret Service. I was actually at Keene University last month, and they had a Women in Technology, but there was a particular focus on cybersecurity skills and be able to translate that from other degrees into cybersecurity. And they had the Secret Service there, the FBI there, Infragard was there, other federal agencies were there. And it turns out it's a lot of the same people, right? So we get to see them, speak with them. How are you doing? What are you guys working on? How's your outreach going? Any new partners that you made? We can kind of reconnect, right? So what if something happens? I have these people on my phone. I could pick up the phone and talk to these people. I have a relationship with them, right? So if there's questions, issues, we can talk about it, right? On the cyber side, we're definitely we're always talking about cybersecurity, but I keep going back to the basics, right? We see here the IT hygiene. My sweet spot in the engineering world and the software engineering world is threat modeling, right? Are you designing software that's secure? And a lot of times software engineers are not asking those questions. I get them to ask those questions. And then security by design, we're teaching people about that as well. Fraud, like I said, we got Natalie, who's a fraud investigator, and she does, her idea about 2 years ago was, hey, there's a ton of fraud going on in the elder community. How do we help? How do we help in any way? And I said, well, you got to tell us. You're in that world, right? What do you want us to do? So we partnered with IC² in New Jersey, who sponsors the CISSPs. We had kind of a relationship with them, but then Ken came on board and became one of our board advisors. He's the president of IC² New Jersey. I said, you know what? We could partner and actually go to these facilities and teach them about fraud, but not like talk at them. We're going to do a skit. Like, we're going to actually recreate the fraud in front of them, right? And we'll do it right for them. And I thought that was brilliant. So we had like 6 to 8 of us there one day. And I do have a video recording that we're going to put on our site. And actually walks you through the scenario, right? People calling you, yeah. Oh, your grandson's in jail. You got to send us money right away. It's incredible. These people are so good. But that's hands, right? Hands and feet on the ground, boots on the ground, going to people and teaching them about risk, but giving them solutions, right? Not just talking at people. AI, I said it several times. I'm not going to go through it again. Drones, I said several times. One of the things that's really important about drones is we're not allowed to shoot them down. Oh my gosh. So you can't shoot them, you can't capture them. So it's like, okay, well, who can do it? Okay, the FBI can do it. There's a couple of other agencies that can do it. So what are the laws about drones and taking down drones? So that's evolving. So stay tuned for that. Soon they're going to have more and more and more guidance as issues present themselves, and the laws and the guidance will evolve. So be very careful about shooting drones down. Educational risks. I talked a little bit about it before, right? Some of the educational risks. Insider threat is near and dear to me. What are we doing about insider threat in our organizations and our educational institutions, right? We need to do more about that. Geolocation. So geolocation, you can say, hey, it's my GPS on my phone. Well, it could also be how you're doing business in various parts of the world, right? Like I said, excuse me, Alex, being in the manufacturing world, his company is global. They get to see risks in the US and other countries. They get to look at what redundancy looks like in other countries and either do it here or vice versa. But also, like, what are we doing? Are we sending US people to those locations? Are we taking workers from those locations into the US? And how are those security ramifications looked at, right? Are we making sure there's security around that capability? And so that's important, being able to understand that. Manufacturing, I touched on it before with Alex. Electric, again, near and dear to my heart, being an electrician for many, many, many years. What are the risks to the grid, right? We keep pulling power off the grid. Let's buy more electric cars. That's perfect. That's a great solution. We're just silly, right? So what's the impact to adding all of this electric to the grid, right? One of the things that we don't talk about much is resilient societies and the capabilities of redundant power systems. So there are solutions out there. There are communities working on solutions, and there is a community called Resilient Societies focused on how to build redundancy into critical infrastructure. And that group has some publications out as well. So we partner with them as well. On the gas, right? The gas grid is now dependent on the electric grid. So years ago, the gas valves used to be powered by the gas pressure. Now they're electric powered valves. So if you lose the grid, you may lose gas. People don't know that. So we're trying to educate people on the risks, right? And the management systems that are sitting on the internet. Water, again, the pressure to the water systems are all dependent on the electric grid. There's so many interdependencies, and I'll talk a little bit about the book we did on interdependencies. But we definitely look at water as well. Materials, I touched on a little bit before, with manufacturing, chemical, but also, what are people using for materials? What are materials that are marked that shouldn't be used, right? You got to keep an eye on that stuff. That's one of the things the FBI does. They keep on who's purchasing what and what are they using it for, right? Some of the materials can be dual use or dual purpose. So it gets a little sketchy. What are they using that for, right? They bought that bag of whatever it is, and what is that really being used for? Should we keep an eye on that or not, right? So materials use and risks are really important around critical infrastructure. Geopolitical aspects, right? When we're talking about wars, even in other countries, cybersecurity risks go up. And we've seen it with Ukraine. We've seen it with other things. The risks are through the roof, and we could talk all day about that. National security, and what is it? Let me pause here for a second. So national security is a topic that's kind of elusive for people. We talk about critical infrastructure protection. We talk about protection of people, number one. But what does national security really mean? So national security means, well, troops shouldn't be here in the US and shooting people. Well, it's well beyond that. It's your financial, it's your medical, it's your ability to travel between states, it's your ability to get gasoline when you need it, it's your ability to get medications when you need it. So national security includes a lot of things. And we really need to educate people on what that is. And the laws, right? How can we influence the laws to protect the citizens and the utilities, right? Like the grid. I'm at 4:45. I'm going to take one more minute and go through these, and then I'll open up for questions. So just some of our partner organizations, I mentioned them several times, the FBI, DHS, CISA, they're kind of hand in hand. CISA is pretty new. I think they're on their second director. I knew Chris Krebs, the first director, really good, great speaker. obviously New Jersey State Police, the OHS&P, which is the counterintelligence arm of state police. We're now plugged in with the NIPD, obviously Secret Service, private company, educational institutions, nonprofit organizations, and there's a list. IAC Squared, ISACA, and now TACDA, right? So we're trying to connect with folks. What are some of our successes? So Duke Energy, when we were doing the book and we were talking to senators and congressmen about who's doing really good work around EMP protection, Duke Energy was like a spotlight. In the Texas area, they've actually able to test EMP protections and deploy them on their electric grid in certain components over the last few years, and they're getting better and better at it. And they are a spotlight. There was one of our congressmen who's retired, who's now on our NDRC committee, and he is working with Duke to promote that the work they're doing all over the country. EMP protections, there's actually books produced now on EMP protection devices. We've had congressional hearings, such as the EMP Commission, but even after that, I think last year, somebody from our group spoke to Congress on the risks to the grid. NERC-FERC influence, right? What are they doing and not doing? We've got people talking to them. We published several books on critical infrastructure protection. There's two of them right there. Spoke to Congress, sending congressmen our book. So we just sent them the book. Every congressman and senator gets a copy of our book. We get invited to speak at agencies, not just the federal agencies, but state and local agencies. We get to speak at congressional events. I was going to cough. And then we also get to speak and look at the grid risks, right? Particularly this group called Resilient Societies. They are really, really on the forefront of creating redundancies. And then some of our consumption projects, right? So what does that mean? So we're putting all these electric cars out there. What is the capability of the grid, right? Nobody's looking at that. So we do have teams at a national level looking at the impacts.